to give my yes to you today. I choose.
Good morning. It's Friday, the 17th of May, and here's a awesome Stockholm lingo. If you have your Bibles this morning, 1 Timothy 1, verses 18 through 20. 1 Timotheus 1, vers 18 tot 20. Timothy, my son, I'm giving you this instruction in keeping with the prophecies previously made about you, so that by recalling them, you may fight the good fight, having faith and a good conscience. Some have rejected these and have shipwrecked their faith. Among them are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have delivered to Satan, so that they may be taught not to blaspheme. What is it to blaspheme? To blaspheme is to use the Lord's name in vain. And it's not just saying, oh my, and then using the Lord's name. It is that. But it's also living a lifestyle where you call yourself a Christian, where you talk about having a faith and a good conscience, but you live with neither. Because then you're making the Lord's name when other people look at the example of your life and they say, oh, so that's what a Christian looks like. And they're busy demeaning and diminishing the holiness of the name of God by the lifestyle that they live, and yet they call themselves Christians. And Paul stands up against that, and he says, such people I've handed over to Satan that they may learn not to blaspheme. And sometimes we need to be disciplined by Satan, by being put outside of the church, out of the protection. But I want to go back to Timothy, my son. I'm giving you this instruction in keeping with the prophecies previously made about you, so that by recalling them, you may fight the good fight. Guys, I want to speak to you specifically this morning. In Africa, we have the saying that says it takes a village to raise a man. We've lost that village. We've lost this accountability where Paul writes to Timothy and says, you're my son. Remember your faith. Fight the good fight. Stand up for what you believe with a strong faith and a good conscience. Today, we're scared to talk to our neighbor. We're scared to call him to a standard that's a biblical standard of living. Today, in churches, in communities, we live for self, and there's no Paul calling us to say, hey, I remember when we prayed and you were excited in the faith and you stood up and you testified and it was prophesied over you that you would be a man amongst men, and now you're becoming a shadow of yourself. And no one's calling anybody to stand up. Never mind the fact that 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if you saw your neighbor's child misbehaving, you would reprimand him, and he would take it, or she would take it, because she knows that you knew her father, and her father would back up everything that you say to her. Now, we see bad behavior in our children and our children's friends, and we're too scared to say something because of what? Because of political correctness, because of parties, because of a world that is going to hell. Let's not blame the world. Let's fight. Let's fight the good fight. Let's take the standard back, and let's as a group of men stand together and say to one another, you know what? I'm going to vote on the 29th of May, but I'm going to take my town back. I'm going to take my neighborhood back. I'm going to take my neighbor and his children, and we're going to live a standard together, and we're going to do it for the good of our community. We're going to do it for the good of our village. Or else, you know what? There aren't any villages anymore. So how can we raise men, women for the future? This is Fighting Talk, and this is a Friday. I want to give you a whole weekend to think about it. And when you go to church on Sunday, if you go to church, if you get together for fellowship, then let's not talk about whether you drive a Ford or a Toyota or a Isuzu. Let's not talk about the weather and the rugby. Let's talk about this kind of stuff. Let's talk about what standard am I asking you to hold my son to, because you know me. If you know me and the standard I live for and the values and the principles that I have, and you don't see them in my son, you have the right to clop him, to grab him by the shirt collar and say, hey, I don't see your father's values, principles in you, he would be ashamed of you today. And I give you that right to speak it into my son if you call yourself my friend. And let's get that kind of mentality going again. Paul takes ownership and he says, hey, Hymenaeus and Alexander, let's hand them over to Satan for a time. Let's get them right. We're not going to accept. We're drawing a line in the sand and that's it. Come on, men and women. Let's stand together. Let's form villages again. Let's form communities again, irrespective of what's politically correct, irrespective of what's going on and which party's leading and who's saying what. Let's take biblical standards and let's say, I'm going to be a Paul to a Timothy. Well, I'm going to look as a Timothy for a Paul in my life. Someone who will hold me to a standard, hold me to accountability, and give me feedback so that I can live with integrity. And I'm not going to blaspheme the name of the Lord in the way I live my life. Well, there you have it. May the Lord bless you. May you have a wonderful weekend. Lord willing, see you on Monday again.
Get